So it's March, right? Time for brackets, ankle breaking, and arguing about whose head looks the most like a basketball. But that's not what this video is about. In English, we were each given a poem to read, interpret, and discuss, and were then told to make these videos that would go head-to-head in the most insane bracket challenge ever. Now, me being the overly passionate poetry gremlin that I am, I was actually excited to do this, and felt like I was given a poem that was right up my alley. That poem is Pied Beauty by Gerard Manley Hopkins. Hopkins was born in 1844 and was raised in the Church of England, but later converted to Catholicism in 1866, and became a Jesuit priest in 1877. Hey, the same year this poem was written. Hopkins was actually very protective of his poetry. When he converted, he burnt most of his works, simply because he felt like his superiors would not accept it. He only began to write 7 years after that, and kept most of his works private, or couldn't get them published due to them being too graphic. A lot of his poetry was discovered only after his death, and letters sent to his friends. With Hopkins being a religious priest, Pied Beauty is a poem that thanks God for the beauty of nature and lists off many of its attributes. This was written the same year that he became a priest, so he probably wrote it as an act of praise to his God that he loved so dearly. Hopkins used a lot of tools to give Pied Beauty a natural-sounding feel to it, requiring for it to be spoken out loud. As I read this poem, you will hopefully see why. Glory be to God for dappled things, for skies of coupled color as a brinded cow, for rose moles all in stipple upon trout that swim, fresh fire-cold chestnut falls, finches' wings, landscape plotted and pieced, fold, fallow, and plow, and all trades, their gear and tackle and trim. All things counter, original, spare, strange, whatever is fickle, freckled, who knows how. With swift, slow, sweet, sour, a dazzle dim, he fathers forth whose beauty is past change. Praise him. Now, reading this poem, you can see its main theme jump out at you. The very start of the poem establishes that this is a religious work, and that theme is still continued with the final line of praise him. The other big theme of this poem is the beauty of nature, as Hopkins points out all of the wonderful things of it. He takes the time to point out the smaller things, like the wings of a bird or the colors of a chestnut, while also zooming out to see the bigger picture, mentioning the sky and fields. Hopkins continuously uses descriptive imagery to get a sense of how colorful everything is, as well as to put a higher emphasis on the beauty of God's creation. Something that jumped out to me is how Hopkins found many human attributes to nature beautiful. He points out farmland, pastures, and all the professions of the land and their inventions. Sometimes we can see ourselves as higher up than nature, but that's not the case. We are entwined with it providing for our needs always. These professions out in the countryside simply live in peace with nature and use the tools provided for them. Apart from the imagery and colorful descriptions, the poem uses a rhythm method called sprung rhythm, which Hopkins used to imitate how people talked. His main goal was to make the poem sound like a natural conversation, possibly to keep with the theme of the poem itself. He used other tactics to keep the poem sounding lively, like having an ABC rhyme pattern, so that way you can just slightly sense the rhyme pattern. The poem is classified as a curtal sonnet, but I like to think of it as an ode to nature. But above it all is Hopkins' use of alliteration. He used it everywhere in the poem, making it feel like a Dr. Seuss book on steroids. The alliteration helps to keep the poem in rhythm, and also sound good to the ear. But Hopkins' true genius is shown when Hopkins pulls a masterful play by going from alliteration into assonance with the line fold, fallow, and plow. And then with the line, with swift, slow, sweet, sour, dazzle, dim, going from alliteration to assonance, back to alliteration. I mean, seriously, this guy was a genius with his pronunciation. Now, all that is nice, but it's all done to point out the real message of the poem, to praise the Creator. And even though not everyone believes in God, nature is still beautiful. The poem takes the time to point out a lot of the tiny details of tiny things, showing how much this creator took the time to think everything through. It's not random, it's art. In our modern world, we can have a hard time finding our purpose with so many options. But just know that nothing is an accident. Everything has a plan, including you watching this. This poem stands as a reminder that when we can feel overwhelmed or confused, just look outside and see how much God planned out nature. There is someone out there who has a plan for you. He shows it everywhere we go. Sometimes we just don't see it. And that's why I think this poem is the best in the bracket. It has beautiful descriptions, an excellent use of alliteration, and an important universal message. One that I hope you watching this can use in your life. But hey, that's just a theory. A poetry theory. Thanks for watching.